Somewhere, a luxurious golden door stood illuminated by a magnificent chandelier. Students from all the academies had gathered with their representatives in front of it. Blue Whale spread his hands wide and, with a smile, congratulated the 10 students, who had overcome the trial of each house. Vikir stared down at the ground in silence. Granui, standing beside him, had eyes shining with joy, while on the other side, Sinclair clenched her fists, unable to help but feel excited and blush. In a serious tone, Blue Whale addressed the 10 finalists. He conveyed the deep respect of each academies, representatives for their exceptional achievement in passing the second stage apprentice system. To ensure their efforts were not in vain, he proceeded to explain, for the last time, the rules for claiming an artifact. Blue Whale pointed a finger toward the ceiling. He explained that the door to this vault, where countless artifacts lay dormant, opened only 1 day a year, today, and for only 5 hours. Blue Whale looked intently at the students and revealed that once the 5-hour time limit passed, the door would close. He warned that it could never, absolutely never, be opened again until next year's competition. Hearing this, the eyes of the Baskerville triplets began to shine with surprise. Blue Whale also commented that this was an absolute rule. He warned them to keep in mind that if they hadn't come out by the time was up, they couldn't be saved, no matter how much anyone wanted to. Blue Whale bowed his head with a sincere expression. He warned that what he was about to say was especially for those who had just returned from completing the Baskerville assignment, and that student Vikir really needed to listen carefully. Vikir snapped out of his thoughts, his eyes widening in confusion and curiosity, unsure of what was happening. Blue Whale's eyes began to flash with anger. He snapped at Vikir that he had arrived late and that they had almost been unable to enter because everyone was waiting for him. He warned him that with his sense of time, he was certain to get locked in, so he demanded that he listen. Granui and Sinclair simply managed a forced smile. Blue Whale yelled at Vikir that if he was going to be late, he should have at least given notice. He explained that they had thought something had happened to him to the point of filing a missing person report. He furiously reminded him that he was responsible for concluding the tournament cleanly, with his position as Tower Lord on the line. Sinclair put a hand near her mouth, closed her eyes and couldn't help but laugh, while on the other hand, Vikir remained silent, feeling confused. Vikir gazed down at the ground, his eyes filled with anger and fear. The image of the tower where Cane Corso was came to his mind. He recalled that in the grave of the stabbed blade, it had felt as if not even a day had passed, but outside the tower, 10 whole days had gone by. Furthermore, the place where he fought Cane Corso was the lowest level of the tower, and there could be something more than a simple space-time distortion. Above it, Vikir lifted his head and his attention fixed on something, causing his expression to change. Vikir began to carefully observe the door in front of him. A strange energy was emerging from it, a demonic energy. He had taken another step, closer to the 10 elite corpses. Slowly, the door began to open and a powerful, intense blue flash started to emerge from within. There were still 5 minutes and 30 seconds before the door would close again. Blue Whale and the other professors sat near the door in silence. The chief of Varangian, Vasilios, watched intently, his eyes widening in surprise. The headmaster of Themyscira Hippolyta rested her chin on her hand and, with a curious expression, wondered what artifacts the students would bring this year, feeling a great sense of curiosity. Blue Whale turned to her and, in a calm tone, reminded her that, as the headmasters well knew, it wasn't a matter of the students choosing the artifact. The contrary, it was the artifact that had to choose the student to be brought beyond the door. Vinci Morgue simply stared at them in silence. With a gentle smile, Blue Whale explained that regardless of the artifact they brought back, the student had already been recognized as worthy. Therefore, he hoped they would receive them with a warm and congratulatory heart. Vasilios turned to him and remained silent, while on the other hand, Hippolyte closed her eyes and nodded with a smile, thinking that he was right. Closing his eyes, Vinci Morgue recalled Blue Whale's words from when Madame had appeared. He had told him how desperate he was for the Mage Tower to win, and for him to now act as if he were in favor of all the students seemed strange and unsettling. Blue Whale turned to him and couldn't help but feel a bit confused. Vinci Morgue clasped his hands, and his eyes began to shine with curiosity, wondering how many students would be chosen this year. At the same time, the students began to pass through the portal to return. The first was Philippus, who was holding his magic staff. Behind him were Lovegood Merlini, Bakira, Sinclair, and the triplets. They began to walk toward Blue Whale and the others. Hippolyte asked the students who had obtained artifacts to report what kind of abilities they possessed. Philippus began to show off his magic staff, which started to glow. With an excited expression, he revealed that he had obtained a staff made with a pink dragon scale that increased his mana. With an excited smile, Lovegood Merlini began to show off a heart-shaped hairpin. It blocked a single mind-type spell, but it had the condition that someone she truly loved had to be by her side. With a smile, Bakira began to show his steel gloves, the Madongwang hand, gauntlets that increased physical strength. It was Dolores's turn. She showed a golden mirror, the mirror of truth. This artifact revealed the true face behind the reflected target's mask, but it only worked on people who were within a range she could handle. The Baskerville triplets raised their swords. They had obtained the Samjito triplet swords that grew stronger when they were together. With an excited expression, Sinclair began to point to the hat she carried on her back. The artifact that had chosen her was the money hat, and it had the ability to increase her magical power by feeding it money. Hippolyte crossed her arms, her attention fixed on Sinclair's hat. She couldn't believe that every student had been chosen by an artifact. This year's class was truly one of a kind. In a curious tone, Vasilios commented that this must mean the artifacts had recognized the students' great talent. He then wondered if everyone had come out by now. Blue Whale gazed at the ground and revealed that there were 20 seconds left. Hearing this, Hippolyte's eyes widened in confusion and surprise. She didn't know what was happening. With a calm expression, Vasilios turned to Blue Whale and asked him why he was sweating so much. Blue Whale put a hand on his head and began to count down the remaining seconds before the door closed. With a serious gaze, Vinci Morgue, who had his hands clasped, revealed that there was one student who had not yet come out. His eyes widened with anger and disappointment. He clarified that a student from his academy, named Vikir, had not yet emerged. Blue Whale put a hand to his face, and as his body trembled, he panicked. He shouted that there were only 20 seconds left, and that, even if students weren't chosen by an artifact, there had never been one who failed to exit the treasure room within the time limit. The portal began to glow intensely, and the professors revealed that if Vikir wanted to live, he had to come out right now. Sinclair's attention fixed on the portal. With a confused gaze, she couldn't help but wonder where Vikir was. Hearing this, Dolores turned around, her eyes shining with worry. Less and less time remained before the treasure room would close. The triplets turned around and panicked when they saw that Vikir still hadn't come out. Philippus remained silent, not knowing what was happening. Lovegood Merlini's eyes widened with surprise and concern, while on the other hand, Bakira felt surprised to notice that Vikir still hadn't come out. When only 4 seconds remained, someone clenched their fist and began to emerge from the portal. It was none other than Granui, gritting his teeth. He had decided not to get trapped inside the treasure room. Granui closed his eyes, unsure if he had made it out. He then stumbled and fell face first to the ground, and at that exact moment, the golden door of the treasure room slammed shut completely. With his face covered in sweat, he got to his feet, panting heavily. With an arrogant smile, he declared that the protagonist always makes his entrance at the end. The eyes of Sinclair and Dolores filled with surprise and fear. The Baskerville triplets were in shock. As the cloud of smoke dissipated, everyone was left speechless. Noticing this, Granui wondered, what's with this atmosphere? The color drained from Vinci Morg's face, and his eyes widened in terror. He couldn't believe that Vikir hadn't come out. At the same time, Vikir was inside the treasure room. Even though the door had closed, his eyes shone with tranquility. He watched, from a high vantage point, more precisely from a pillar, and felt relieved as he was finally alone. Without wasting any more time, Vikir landed elegantly on the ground, his eyes filled with determination, for he had to take care of the seventh corpse. Inside this door where no one else was. Before that bastard could plan something, Vikir got to his feet. He saw that the room was replete with artifacts, and the only thing illuminating the place was the moonlight. The problem was finding it in this place. Vikir began to walk through the area, and then his eyes started to glow with rage. He could feel it, the scent of a demon, in this room. There were all sorts of artifacts, from magic potions to normal and magical weapons. Our boy began to walk in silence, recalling that it was said an artifact lets you know instantly who the chosen one is. And he wondered if the light they emitted was proof of this. Our boy had no interest in any of the glowing artifacts. Vikir stopped walking and stood still. His eyes shone with rage as he gritted his teeth hard. What he was looking for was here, the only inanimate demon among the supreme corpses. Vikir's attention fixed on several powerful weapons. Among them were a mace, a shield, a bow, and a sword. He knew that the seventh corpse, Decarabia, was nearby. Vikir began to observe the sword carefully. He knew better than anyone that, although it looked like a magnificent and beautiful artifact, the deepest darkness always hides behind the brightest light. Consumed by rage, Vikir unsheathed his sword, began to stare intently at the displayed sword, and declared that the game of hide-and-seek was over. Without wasting another second, Vikir moved like a thunderclap, unleashing several powerful yet precise slashes. Our boy's attack shattered the artifact holding the weapons to pieces. Our boy did not let his guard down. Hidden behind it was the demon Decarabia, who had been sleeping. Not long after, it woke up, and its eye began to glow with malice. The demon began to stare intently at our boy, creating an intense pressure. Vikir stood ready for combat. As its eye glowed with rage, the demon called him weak and ignorant, asking if he was the one who had awakened it. This demon was the seventh corpse, Decarabia. It had a danger level of S+, and was known as a natural enemy of humanity, one of the 10 disasters considered incomprehensible and impossible to kill. Just as cited in the 10 Commandments, this being, like a plague of locusts, would lay waste to all food supplies. This is the end of the video. If you guys want to see the next part,